Hello, welcome to the review of Caldari Navy Hookbill. Hookbill is another very popular frigate in faction warfare, and it's in fact my favorite ship. I used it extensively in my early days of EVE career, and I think it's still one of the most flexible and strong Navy frigates in the game. So as you can see, Hookbill is the second most popular frigate, only behind Comet. And in terms of win rates, it is the third Navy frigate, behind only Navy Vigil and Navy Comet. But even though the win rate is about 6 percentage points below the Comet, for example, Hookbill is, I think, as strong as the Comet, or at least very strong, very close to the Comet, if you know how to use the Hookbill. The main difference is that Comet is just much easier to fly and get the maximum performance out, while for the Hookbill you need to understand matchups and interactions between feats better to get similar performance. But we will talk about it in the section about feats. Okay, let's start with profile and performance. The most distinctive feature of Hookbill is 5 medium slots, and this is crucial for frigate PvP because it allows to fit exceptional control. So you can technically, even though most Caldari frigates and Hookbill is not an exception, technically shield tank ships, you can avoid shield tank in the Hookbill and just go with maximum control. And in this case, you will get something like Afterburner Scrum plus 3 remaining modules for pure control, which can be Double Web and Tracking Disruptor. And this allows Hookbill to mitigate a lot of weaknesses like slow base speed, relatively poor damage, kinetic log damage or soft kinetic log damage, and so on, because control is just so important in frigate PvP. So in terms of roles, typically Hookbills will be Scrum Kiters with rockets and usually 2 webs. Hookbill needs 2 webs to apply maximum damage with rage missiles against afterburner frigates. So for the most, in most cases, for missile ships, for missile frigates, you will very often see double web for this exact reason, for maximum application. Hookbill can kite. It's not particularly great because it's very, very slow, and you need to dedicate a lot of fitting to make it faster, to make it reasonably fast, so to say. So kiting Hookbills were in the meta before 2014, so more than 11 years ago, before light missile damage was nerfed. And after that, they were kind of on the side of meta. In the recent year, in 2025, I noticed that kiting Hookbills became a bit more popular. This is mostly as a response against Navy destroyers. Navy destroyers are extremely popular in faction warfare right now, and it's quite difficult to kill them in Scrum kiting Hookbill, although it's possible with so much control. So that people kind of started just fitting counters to Navy destroyers, and kiting Hookbill is a good counter to Navy destroyer because you can just mitigate all the damage with so many medium slots. But it's still light missile Hookbills remain a bit of a rare sight in Warzone for now. So let's go through the performance quickly. For Navy frigates, Hookbill can fight any Navy frigate, you can see that the average win rate is exactly 50%. In my experience, Hookbill is a bit above 50% in matchups against Navy frigates, but it doesn't really matter. The key takeaway is that you can engage practically everything. Now, against Tick 1 frigates, these fights are quite easy because Tick 1 frigates do not really have the control to mitigate damage of Hookbill. And in terms of just pure tank and DPS, Navy frigates are obviously better. And Hookbill is not an exception. Now, against Tech 1 and Navy destroyers, I think Hookbill is quite a bit better than the Comet. If you take the Comet is a very straightforward ship. You kind of get in the optimal, and when you try to win the DPS race, there are really no tricks that you can do. And if you engage against close range destroyer, Navy destroyer in particular, these straightforward DPS races may not be that favorable for the Comet. With Hookbill, you can fit a lot of control and electronic warfare, and you can just mitigate a lot of the damage. And in this case, fights do not turn into straightforward DPS races. They turn into more of a control races. And in these situations, Hookbill is of course much better because you can fit very strong anti-destroyer fits using 5 medium slots. And as you can see, against almost like 40% against Navy destroyers is very good, and more than 80% against Tick-1 destroyers. Other matchups are not that important. You are not gonna fight them all that often. I would only say that against assault frigates, again, Hookbill is quite decent, unlike Comet, for example. Again, because you have so much control, you can often just mitigate the damage entirely. And after that, just pure tank and DPS doesn't really matter that much. So against not all assault frigates, but some assault frigates, Hookbill is actually very strong. And like 30+% win rate generally, I think, reflects that. Okay, now let's look at the most popular fits for the Hookbill. We will firstly look at more popular Scrum kiting archetype, and then we will cover kiting fits. For Scrum kiting archetype, you have 3 variations with their own advantages and disadvantages. These 3 variations have a bunch of modules in common, so let's look at the common modules first, and then we will talk about the differences. So the common modules are obviously you have 3 rocket launchers in high slots, and you have Afterburner Scrum plus 2 webs in medium slots. As I said, you need 2 webs to apply full damage with Rage rockets against frigates with Afterburners. So in general, when you see a rocket frigate in faction warfare, they will typically have 2 webs fitted just to ensure full mitigation against frigates with Afterburners. And you have damage control, which will be common for all the variations, and you have DPS rig. Again, as a general rule, frigates do not really have fitting space to support ballistic control system, which takes 40 CPU. You just don't have so much CPU available. So in general, in these frigates, you will have a rig as a module to boost your DPS. Okay, now what are the differences? The most typically the difference comes down to your 5th medium slot. So you can use MASB, you can use Tracking Disruptor, or you can use Medium Shield Extender. I prefer the fit with MASB, with Medium Ancillary Shield Booster, because this fit is the most straightforward, and it covers the largest portion of your engagement range. In this feat, you can engage in straightforward DPS races. So you get to Scrum Kiting range, and then you just apply DPS and then you tank. And because you have so much tank, you have 2 ancillary reps, plus damage control on top of that. You can win against, I would say, all Navy frigates at Scrum range. For example, against quite popular aerial Scrum Kiting Comet, this feat just wins without any fancy micro. You just win on tank and DPS. Now the weakness is if you engage ships that have better tank and DPS, for example, against some of the Navy destroyers, then this idea doesn't work. If your opponent simply has better numbers, then you need to mitigate. And the second, also very popular variation for the Hookbill, and I think it's getting more popular again now, with as a counter to Navy frigates, as a counter to Navy destroyers, is this feat with Tracking Disruptor. So again, it's quite similar. You throw away MASB and replace it with Tracking Disruptor, and of course you don't need shield tank anymore, so you throw away rigs for shield tanking and replace them with rigs for hull tanking, and your main tank now is hull. The disadvantage of this feat is that it's really, in terms of hit points, it's paper thin. And if you fight against ships that don't care about your Tracking Disruptor, for example, against drone ships, then this feat is significantly worse, obviously. Besides, your Tracking Disruptor works only against turrets, and it doesn't work against rockets or light missiles. So if you fight against missile ships, you need to refit. So again, your engagement profile gets a bit narrower and narrower. On the other hand, the big advantage of this feat is against destroyers. So if you can, especially against Navy destroyers that struggle with tracking, or don't have bonuses to tracking, you don't need to engage in the unwinnable DPS races. You can just mitigate. And you can even feed double Tracking Disruptor against destroyers without changing anything on this feat. Maybe you will need to just downgrade your damage control to a compact one. And use just double Tracking Disruptor because you don't need double webs for control and damage application against destroyers. And if you use double Tracking Disruptor against destroyers, then you will just mitigate all the damage, and then your hit points doesn't matter. Your tank doesn't matter at all. Okay, and now the third variation, it's quite similar to the very first one. It's also primarily shield tanking Hookbill, but here it is buffer tanked, so it's a medium shield extender. The main disadvantage of this feat is that you get fewer hit points when with the MASB feat after you use all the ancillary charges. So effectively this feat is not as tanky as the feat with medium ancillary shield booster. The advantage is that you can kinda cram the BCS here, and your DPS is a bit higher. So in terms of tank to DPS, these feats are comparable. I would say this one is still a bit better on numbers, but this one is quite comparable. Now, I think I want to show you one more, which is this one. This is kind of continuation of the same idea, is the polarized Hookbill. So the feat is essentially the same, you just throw away damage control, which is useless for the polarized launchers, and the rest is quite similar. This feat reaches almost 400 DPS before any implants or boosters, and if you are in position, this type of damage is actually quite difficult to deal with, because you will just blast through any active tank on your opponent. And you will have full application as well, because you will have two webs. It's not like on Daredevil or on Comet, where your void damage can be at least partially mitigated. Here it cannot be mitigated. Your opponent will eat full 400 DPS. As usual with polarized feats, they are not good out of position, because if you warp into a comet, for example, it will just melt you before you can pull range, because you don't have any buffer to work with. But these feats are pretty strong if you like to sit inside complexes and fight frigates, when this variation is quite decent. Okay, the final feat I want to show you is the kiting hookbill. As I mentioned before, it's not that popular, but it works in the current meta, because you will see just so many destroyers and navy destroyers in particular. And against them, it works fine. So you have very decent range, because Hookbill has bonus to range. You don't care about your application, because you will apply to destroyers anyway with Fury. And with Fury your damage is respectable for a light missile kiter. And you have Tracking Disruptor to mitigate the damage at Warp Disruptor range. And you have enough like low slots and rigs to actually make Hookbill decently fast. It's not gonna be that fast, but it's acceptable. So this one works fine against destroyers primarily. Against frigates you will not have a good time, because even if you fight against an afterburner frigate and you have full control, you will have to switch from Fury to Navy missiles to apply, otherwise your application will just be horrendously bad. And in this case you will apply something like 100 DPS, and it will take you just like half an hour to kill a frigate, which is a typical problem for many light missile kiters. So against frigates it's not that great. It works, but it's just not the right tool for the job, I would say. But against destroyers it works very well. Okay, these are the main archetypes for the Hookbill. It's a very flexible ship. If you know how to use it and how to counter other popular feats in the Warzone, this can be one of the strongest Navy frigates in faction warfare, I feel like. Okay, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next videos.